Oh yeah, I have to sync the mics. Episode, 11 of What Happens in the Crypt, scare package.
Oh, don't clap because I don't want you to scare her.
I'm not gonna clap. I'm gonna slide the goo into the rest of the goo.
Oh no. Okay.
He's gotta be all together. What if he reforms without all the goo? He doesn't know.
If you like the podcast, don't forget to check us out on Instagram at What Happens in the Crypt. We're also on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.
Hey there, videophiles, swamp monsters, serial killers, and frights.
This is episode 11 of What Happens in the Crypt.
Today we're talking about the 2019 horror anthology, Scare Package.
Trigger warnings for this movie are simply just gore, because this is mainly a horror comedy, so there's really not much to worry about. It's a pretty safe watch.
Yeah, and the gore is kind of goofy most of the time and over the top.
Yeah, it's mainly silly, so even the blood and guts aren't too scary or upsetting, honestly.
Scare Package is a collection of 7 horror tales centered around Rad Chad's Horror Emporium, where Chad is trying to teach his new hire, Han, the rules of the genre. What I really like about this movie is its self-awareness of the horror genre.
This has the final girl stereotypes, the slasher movie tropes, the babysitter slangs. It pretty much has everything you could hope for from a horror movie.
You know, the creators of this movie were very aware of what they were doing just from the tagline. 7 directors, 7 tales of terror, 0 working cell phones.
I love that tagline so much. I didn't even know that was the thing.
Yeah, if you go to their website, it says it.
It's perfect.
Even if you just Google the movie, you'll see their website, and that's all it says. Their little tagline.
0 cell phones. Perfect.
A group of not very well-known directors and writers came together and made a pretty fun horror comedy.
The first story in this movie centers around a character called Mike Myers, of course.
No relation.
Right. And he essentially is the person that sets up horror movies. So he's the one that lays out the haunted dolls, he cuts the power, all of that stuff. And this story was written and directed by Emily Higgins.
And it's like that every time. These instructions tell me to do bad things and then get out of the movie. That's my job.
It's not that bad.
The story starts with him doing a very classic trope of switching the signs around so that a group of teens would get lost on their drive.
Right, I think the sign is literally like crazy insane asylum or safety.
Yeah.
And he switches there all around.
And the group of teens unknowingly drives the wrong way.
Right.
Guys, my map says that the campsite's to the right.
What? Are you blind, Stacy? That's where the insane asylum is. Can't you read arrows?
I don't know, I really don't have a good feeling about this.
Let's go. This weekend is all about no rules, no clothes, and no cell service.
He also sells homes that are haunted to unknowing buyers. I love the line where they say, "Oh yeah, if we look up the house, we're not going to find anything, are we?" And he's just like, "Oh yeah, you won't find anything as long as you don't look before 1970.
And there's like a demonic little girl in the doorway, and he's like, "Come on, let's go."
Yeah, come on, let's go.
Let's move on.
Yeah, he doesn't want him to look at it. It looks like the girl from The Ring.
Right.
After talking to his friend one day, Mike decides that he doesn't want to just be the setup. He wants to be a character.
So Mike ends up in another classic horror movie scenario where these 2 girls are babysitting and he's like lurking around in the yard and he cuts the power. But instead of just walking away, he tries to like come in and become a part of the story.
Yeah, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to become like a part of the quote-unquote movie, but it's real. Upon entering, one of the girls notices that he has these wire cutters that he just leaves in his pocket, as you do.
Right, not suspicious at all.
Not suspicious at all. And almost immediately they realize that and blame him for cutting the power.
One of the babysitters ends up grabbing the wire cutters, and she stabs him in the hand in an attempt to like save themselves, but she slips in the blood and stabs herself instead.
In the throat.
And it's very gory, blood spraying everywhere.
Yeah, and the other babysitter comes downstairs as he's trying to pull the cutters out of his neck. And then he does get the cutters out of her neck and stabs the other babysitter. And then she goes to tug it out. And he's like, oh no, you shouldn't do that. You should leave it in.
Right, and that's when he puts that, like, white mask on that gets sprayed with blood.
Yeah, she pulls it out, and there's just, like, a ridiculous, like, insane amount of blood that starts to spray out all over him.
It's amazing.
After the babysitter slayings, his friend shows up, who happens to be a police officer, and he gets taken away out of the house, and as he's being dragged out of the house, he's like, oh, what? I didn't know it was daylight, or what a beautiful sunrise. And she just says, oh yeah, these movies always end at sunrise.
Right. There has to be some hope at the end. The sun is coming up.
Oh, I didn't realize the sun had come up.
Oh, yeah. They always end horror movies in daylight. It's a sign of hope.
This story ends with Mike being in the car with Rad Chad of the Horror Emporium, where the rest of the movie is centered. And he's essentially pitching this story as like a screenplay to Chad. And Chad drops him off, and then there's this really wonderful callback to Nightmare on Elm Street where he closes the top of his convertible, and it's red and green stripes like Freddy's sweater.
Mm-hmm. And there's also a couple other driving shots you can see in the car. There's like a John Wayne Gacy clown
Right.
on the dashboard. Or it's hanging from the mirror, I can't remember. One of those, but there's a John Wayne Gacy clown.
Mm-hmm. From this point on, every story that's in the movie is actually a VHS that they're playing at Rad Chad's Horror Emporium. So that's kind of how it leads you back to each tale. The next story is definitely our favorite, and this one centers around a swamp monster of sorts and some teens that are in the woods, and this one was directed by Chris McEnroy. This follows a group of teens that are camping in the woods, and a dude like approaches them in the clearing, and he's going through some sort of weird transformation, and he ends up becoming this like gooey swamp monster.
I don't understand. I'm gonna kill you all. I'm sorry, but you have to kill me, please. Now. Help him.
And he's shouting at them that he needs to have like stopped by Silver.
Right.
And one of the girls throws a watch from her boyfriend that turns out to be fake and doesn't do anything.
Right.
And that kid, the guy that gave her the watch, is actually the
From Hook?
From Hook, yeah, one of the kids from Hook.
I could not look past that. It's from Hook. It is the kid that chants Rufio. You can't forget his face.
No,
it's very obvious.
Yep. And then to stop the transformation, the other boyfriend character just puts handcuffs on him, and then that's when even more chaos starts, because they're all like, wow, that's great. And then they're like
so kinky.
Yeah,
okay.
Wait, why do you have these handcuffs?
And it turns out that he's like the crazy woods murderer. I can't even remember what the title was. But then it moves from this like gooey transformation to this dude trying to kill all of them.
Yeah, but the makeup in this one is one of the reasons why it's my favorite. He's all like, he starts like melting, his like skin starts to melt off, and then his like eyeballs start to fall out, and like he's like got this green goo, and it's really well done.
And the gore is like so gratuitous. There's truly so much ridiculous blood and guts and goo.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out how they did the makeup in this, and I think it started off as makeup, but then I don't know for sure, because this movie is so new that there's not too much behind the scenes yet. So, as his like final transformation when he has the handcuffs on, I couldn't tell if it was either like really heavily like prosthetics and stuff, because there's no CGI in this one, and I thought it was either he's like half buried or like like kneeling in this goo, partially buried, or if it's a puppet. It might be a puppet.
I'm pretty sure it's a puppet, only because of the way the eyeballs are falling
And the
out.
way his like mouth is moving, because like his parts of his face are just
Right.
gone.
One of the other amazing things that happens in this one is one of the girls is trying to escape and she runs into a tree branch
That sticks all the way through her face.
that makes her head explode.
No, because she gets stabbed through the face, and then the killer picks up a rock.
Oh, I forgot about the rock.
And then
Excuse
just
me.
throws the rock at her head, and it hits her in the head, and then her head just completely explodes like a bomb was in her head. It's
Yeah.
so funny.
And there's also like a random hiker that gets his legs chopped
Oh,
off, and then the
That's my
murderer's
favorite part.
beating him with his legs.
Yeah, he rips the guy's legs off. He's like, "Oh, my legs! I was getting ready for a marathon." He's like, "He ripped my legs off. Now he's beating me with my legs."
Oh, beating me with my own leg. Now he's beating me with both my legs. I just signed up for a marathon.
So yeah, this one is just really funny. It's so well done. Like, the makeup is truly so good, or the puppetry, or however they did it. It's super amazing.
Yeah, and that was not even half the jokes and half the humor
Yeah,
to it. There's so much
exactly.
more.
From this story and moving forward, there's also this really cool, like, techno background music that transfers throughout, and it's in the background of all of the different shorts, and it ties them all together, which is really cool.
The last thing with this scene is just like what I mentioned in the beginning. I gotta mention the part where I won't say too much about the end of it, but the final girl for this one slips on some of the goo
Right.
from the monster as she's running away, and he's the goo monster guy. He's just like, well, hey, I saw that you slipped on some of my goo and put some goo away from the pile.
I do love this because he's like, could you put that back? And she's like, I don't think so.
I don't want to touch it.
I don't feel comfortable.
And he's like, yeah, I get it, but like, I'm gonna change back, and like, I don't know what's gonna happen if some of the goo's gone. She just
So
like,
silly.
pushes it back into the pile. It's so funny.
Yeah, this is definitely the best one of the whole movie. The next story involves a man that goes to like a self-help group type deal when he finds a flyer in the bathroom
I forgot he
about
found it in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Oh, because it's in the men's room, because it's a man's group. They're so
Right.
manly.
do you feel like you're being neutered?
Oh, gosh.
That type of bullshit. This story was written and directed by Noah Sagan, and it essentially follows the main dude that finds the flyer as he comes across this self-help group where I described them as incels, but they're just a group of women-hating men.
This is actually Noah Sagan. I hope we're saying that right. He's like, I would say, the most famous person involved with this movie, and this is his directorial debut. He's more so known for his acting, being in films such as, hold on, I got a list right here. He's in things like, he's in Knives Out. He's not known for like his main roles, but he's in a lot of movies. Like, he's in Star Wars The Last Jedi. He's in Camera Obscura, which actually we need to watch and possibly do an episode on.
I've never seen it.
He's in Tales of Halloween. He's in an episode of Breaking Bad. He's in Looper. He's in a lot of movies, and he's trying to, do more with his career.
One of the things I love about this skit, and it's definitely just because I'm a dog trainer and a super dog nerd, was just all of the terminology. So when they're talking at this like self-help meeting, there's like a dude leading it. They say so many hilarious things that they're referring to them being like men that are not being taken seriously, but they use all these dog terms because, surprise, they're werewolves. But one of the things they say is like, we heal to be good boys. We follow the silent whistle of emasculation, and it cracked me up so much.
But it is like a great like duality where it's like, yeah, we just need to be men.
Yeah.
But it's at the same time so many dog terms, but it works for both.
It's so funny.
Not cowering. They are trying to domesticate us. We roll over and we beg because society says we should be softer, gentler. We heal to be good boys. We obey when we hear the silent whistle of emasculation, the muzzle of oppression. It is keeping us from being who we were meant to be. We're gonna take it back. We're gonna attack. Right for the jugular.
The group meets at a football field for some man time.
And it's here that they transform into werewolves, but they all have super unique makeups. Like, one of them wears a football helmet. One of them is very like mouse-like. The makeups are all non-CGI as well. They're all practical effects, and they're all super unique. And I definitely feel like they pull from different like strong werewolf imagery.
Yeah.
So that was really cool to see. It's really fun that there's not really the transition aspect, but they just are different kinds of werewolves.
Yeah, it kind of looks like some are like different dog breeds than others too.
Yeah.
Which is cool. They're all unique. No two are the same, which is really cool. We won't go into too much fine detail of the story. Just watch the movie for yourself. But I like and appreciate the uniqueness to some of the werewolf killings. Our main character turns out to be a hunter of sorts.
He ends up shoving a bar of chocolate down one of their throats because, as we all know, chocolate is poison to dogs.
And another one that I thought was, worth mentioning is he takes off his wedding ring, puts it in his shotgun, and shoots it into one of them because it's a silver ring. So that was pretty cool. And then he ends up like jamming his hand into its guts and ripping it out.
It's very well done.
Yeah, and it's pretty brutal.
The next story was written and directed by Hillary and Courtney Anjajar. And this one's a little bit of a different twist on like the girls' slumber party trope. So they end up stealing a essentially kind of haunted lollipop from a store.
They're in that really weird store, and it's just like this almost like quarantined off skull sucker.
Yeah, and she just snags it on her way out.
After obtaining this sucker thing and leaving the store, it's revealed that someone or something is following them.
They go back to their cabin, and it's very much like slumber party-esque. They have a record player.
The record player is actually really cool.
Yeah.
I mentioned that we every time we've watched it, we always like forget about it, and then we're just like whispering to each other, "Oh, that record player, that thing's really cool."
It's totally from Urban Outfitters.
Oh, it's definitely from Urban Outfitters, and it's probably actually kind of shitty.
Right.
But it looks cool. Like, whatever. It's a good prop. The girl who stole the lollipop dumps her, like, bag, and one of the other girls grabs the lollipop and is kind of looking at it and, like, she didn't know that she had stolen it, and she gives it a lick.
After she licks the stolen, possibly haunted lollipop, she says that her face is hot and she has to lay down.
Yeah, she puts a rag on her face and, like, stops breathing for a second, and her friends freak out.
She shoots up off the bed, and her face is transformed into a total replica of the lollipop. She has, like, an orange skull on top of her own face.
And she's got, like, those weird, like, teeth.
Right. I actually like the makeup a lot.
Yeah, it's like it's definitely like you've never seen anything like that before.
It like borders like mask versus like actual like transformation makeup. Like, and you can tell it's not a mask, but it doesn't quite look like her face is turning into this orange skull either.
Shortly after the first girl changes, they are all these red skull, and they're kind of like goopy.
Right.
monstrosities.
One of the girls calls the shop owner to be like, help us, we're turning into these monsters. And it's just this really long, drawn out laugh. It's very creepy.
And then she hangs up.
Yeah. Just laughs and hangs up.
Hello? I'm wondering about a piece of candy that we got at your store.
Tell her I'm sorry.
Why is she laughing? Why are you laughing? What is so funny?
So all along in the background, there's been this person that's been watching them and stalking them, and he kind of makes his move, and they're all demons or possessed or whatever they are. And they pull him in, and there's blood everywhere that turns into a pillow fight. There's music, there's dancing. It's great.
It's a happy ending. Next, I would say, is my second favorite one, directed by Anthony Cousins, is the 4th of July Killer, I'm pretty sure it's called. This one basically starts, I would say, if this was like a feature, this would be like the middle of the horror movie.
Right. It opens with this girl and her friends, and they've laid a trap to catch this dude that's been terrorizing her for every 4th of July, as long as she can remember,
She just
basically.
keeps killing her boyfriends.
Keeps killing him.
The killer shows up, and they basically just jump him and tase the crap out of him.
From here, they end up taking him to this, like, garage where they try every torture tactic to kill him, and everything they try, he just has this ridiculous laugh when it doesn't work.
They stab him, they electrocute him, and all the while, everybody's getting picked off one by one. Just nothing's working.
Right, there's this amazing line where her current boyfriend at the time is like, he's dead, so now have sex with me. Because, of course, he murders all of her boyfriends after they sleep together.
I love... it's so funny.
It's amazing.
Greg?
Daisy, he's dead. Now have sex with me.
And after the stabbing him repeatedly doesn't work, they try electrocuting him with a car battery. And they go to... The one guy goes to check his heartbeat, and he's like, I'm pre-med. And he pulls out a stethoscope and checks his heartbeat. But then his heart sends the electricity back into his head, and he dies.
Oh, it's so good.
He was pre-med.
In the end, the main girl ends up shoving him into a wood chipper, but as he's going down, he says, but wait, I'm your brother. And for some reason, this is hysterical to me. It's just like every horror movie where the ending is like, but I'm your sister, I'm your twin, I'm whoever.
And then I love that it's like kind of emphasized or something that he's not really dead and he's now a puddle.
Right.
It's like, is that puddle him?
The next story follows essentially a possession fight that happens, and this one was directed by Baron Vaughn. This one starts with this like shady interaction that's happening between these men, and they end up burning it's a horseshoe symbol. What is it?
It's the Omega symbol.
Is that
in the
Omega symbol?
Greek alphabet.
Into one of the men's foreheads.
After pulling him out of their trunk and burying him.
Yeah.
After burying him, you start to see this, like, fog. Okay, this one has CGI. It's, like, the only one that has CGI, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, so does the 4th of July Killer one with some of the fireworks stuff. But this is the one that kind of relies a little heavily on CGI, and I'm not a huge fan of it, but the CGI in it. But some of it is cool, and I'll forgive it. But now there's like this fog that's kind of like traversing through this park, and it's getting like spooky. And then you see a woman who's on the phone in her car in the park.
So the fog essentially like comes into her car, and she ends up possessed by the man with the Omega symbol. and she goes back to her apartment to catch up on her TV show, and that's who she was talking to on the phone. It's a new episode. She's really excited.
Yeah, she's talking to her friend about
Right.
it, but she hates spoilers.
Yeah, it turns into this fight to the death for the remote.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, actually. This isn't my favorite one, but none of these are bad. Like, they're all entertaining to watch, and they're all, like, unique. They're all trying to cover the various horror tropes and horror elements. So this is it's an interesting possession one.
One of the things that I do love about this is there is that like screen that says Battle of Mages.
Yeah, it's showing
and
what the show is.
It shows them like holding a crystal ball and posing in a leather jacket. And it's so funny.
And
it's so
like the
good.
80s theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny.
That's really good.
I love how the guy, like the dead guy with the symbol burned into his forehead, he just keeps saying, he's like, I have so much to do. I have so much to do. That's all I think he says.
Right.
And the first thing he does is sit down on the couch and watch that show.
She ends up fighting this entity. She wins. She gets the remote back.
And that's the cool ending to the fight is like she punches him in the face, but then it cuts to her falling back because she was fighting herself.
Yeah, she beats the shit out of herself. But this ends on like one of my other favorite lines of this whole movie is she gets in the car, like I don't know if she's driving to the hospital or where she's going, but she checks her phone and her friend texts her in all caps, the twin died.
Yeah,
and she starts screaming
because the show she's been wanting to watch the whole time gets spoiled for her.
It's so funny.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. The final segment is kind of the culmination of this whole Rad Chad Han story that's been going on the whole time, and Rad Chad is so excited to have Han, who's
his
this
new
employee,
best friend.
his employee and new best friend that he's been training throughout this whole movie, and he drugs him. And it's funny because he's talking about like, oh yeah, it's so funny in all these horror movies when some unsuspecting idiot gets drugged, and then he passes out because he's been drugged, and he wakes up in this cell with our other new characters.
Right, and they're all essentially like horror movie tropes.
Every single one.
They are the Breakfast Club. They even joke about the Breakfast Club. There's the pothead. There is the jock.
The jock is dressed as Johnny Depp from Nightmare on Elm Street. Even wearing the 10 cut-off jersey.
Right. So they're all their own like stereotype as far as horror movie characters go.
Horror logic. Jock. Stoner, right?
Sure you want to do this?
I was gonna say British. Did I hear a slight accent? Which would make you final girl.
Well, then who the hell are you?
Well, I'm obviously the know-it-all horror guy.
I just love how hurt Rad Chad is that Han betrayed him. The main premise of this one is that there's this underground facility that is testing all the horror tropes. Like, you see, they go into different rooms and there's, like, horror... a car won't start if the horror movie villain is within 50 feet of the car, or...
They have like the girl on the treadmill and she falls every like 5 steps if he's following her.
So she can't escape from the killer. Mm-hmm. And it's in this scene where they bring in the Devil's Lake killer or something. It's something very close to that. And the Devil's Lake killer, he starts killing everybody in this lab. There is a lot of deaths in this part.
Mm-hmm. It's very similar to like Cabin in the Woods, like the ending there where they end up at the facility where all the monsters are and they just get unleashed. It's pretty much the same premise where the serial killer lake dude gets released and starts taking everybody out.
Mm-hmm. And there's actually a lot of really cool deaths in this part where like they walk out of a room and there's that woman scientist who gets hit by, destroyed by this treadmill, and then she's pinned up against the wall, and then her legs fall
drop.
off. Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of cool parts here. I'm pretty sure this part is where most of the budget went.
As they're like trying to escape, they run into Joe Bob of the Joe Bob drive-in movies, and he tries to help them like maneuver this facility and get away from the serial killer.
If you people want to live, come with me.
Joe Bob Briggs.
It's time to get the hell out of Dodge.
We have not yet watched any of the Joe Bob features, but after watching this, he was very funny in it. And also, my good friend has a big sweatshirt with Joe Bob on the back of it, so I think we definitely need to check him out.
Yeah, and as we've mentioned just a couple times, we have Shudder, and we've definitely seen his face multiple times.
Just haven't watched it yet.
One of my favorite parts is basically Rad Chad is in love with Joe Bob. Also, shout out to Rad Chad's bolo tie. Love the bolo tie. I'm a big fan of the bolo tie.
Yeah, you do actually wear bolo ties.
Shout out to bolo ties. I'm the only guy in Michigan wearing a bolo tie.
That's very true.
But I love them. But anyways,
quiet whisper.
I love them. But anyways, Joe Bob unfortunately gets taken out by the killer, and now Rad Chad is trying to seek his revenge. He's now trying to stop the killer so everybody else can escape. And I love the shot where he's like holding his arm out, and then the camera is attached to his arm, and like something gets thrown at him, and then his arm just falls off.
Yeah.
It's really cool. That's a really cool shot.
Mm-hmm. It ends up following the trope of the final girl, which they joke about throughout this whole segment. And she ends up escaping.
After they do the trope within the skit, because the killer is too close to the car. And
right.
The stoner guy has to get out of the car to drag his body
right
just a couple feet away, so he's far enough because he's too close, so the car won't start.
Stop starting.
When placed within 14 meters of any American-made car, the engine will not start.
14 meters.
What?
That's what they were doing back there, tests and shit. He's gotta be 14 meters away or it won't start.
Oh, fuck, I've got to move him. Oh, fuck, no! Come on! Jesus Christ, I don't want to touch that dude!
At the end of the movie, our friend Mike Myers shows back up just in time.
Final girl drove away, but of course the killer was in the back seat all along. He tries to attack her, she gets out, and Mike is there with a cigarette.
Yeah, and he flicks the cigarette, and then of course it lights a perfect trail back to the car, and then it explodes as they walk away.
Well, they run away.
Oh, they run away, but still. Of course, the movie of tropes has to end with a trope.
Of course.
But it's perfect that way. I really like that they did that, because it's just so aware of what it is. The movie knows what it is.
So we really like this movie. It's fun. It's one that you have to be in the mood for sure. I definitely find that the end just lags a lot, but I'm in it exclusively for the Swamp Monster skit and some of the other ones. It's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, it's not a perfect movie, but we definitely would watch it again.
Usually we do a really good job of keeping track of the deaths, but honestly, I lost track on this one. There's a lot. If any of you figure it out, we would love to know the official death count.
Yeah, there's just a lot of deaths between all the skits, all the segments, and I feel like for this one, the count isn't so important because it almost is like each segment has its own, but it is a lot.
This one is a Shudder exclusive, so obviously you have to watch it on Shudder.
Yep. Get Shudder.
Do it.
It's fun. They don't pay us to say that. We just say it.
We'd like for them to pay us to say that.
We'll see maybe one day. But for now, if you like horror movies, you should have Shudder. They also have a website. Scare Package has its own website that you should check out. They have their own little merch section. That's pretty much what their website is. I think it's a couple stickers and poster. I can't remember exactly, but check it out. Support them. Maybe they'll make more stuff like this. I hope they do.
Mm-hmm. Next week, we are talking about the 1999 action, horror, comedy, whatever it is, masterpiece that is Deep Blue Sea. It's our first shark movie.
I love this movie so much.
It's
only
so
made
good.
better by the beautiful, talented, in this movie, chef with a wonderful parrot, LL Cool J, who also did the soundtrack. The people behind this movie made a lot of great calls here. Just love LL Cool J so much in this movie. It was so smart. So funny.
Yeah. You know when that guy, like, slipped in my goo, some of it separated from the rest of my goo? Do you think you could just push it back together, kind of consolidate the goo for me?
No, I just don't feel comfortable with, touching the goo.
I'm just a little concerned that, like, when I change back, if I'm missing some of the goo, I don't know what's going to happen, honestly. This isn't, you can't learn this stuff in a manual, so for me, it's a little bit scary.
Okay, sure.